This is big. We're going to be talking about some possible trade destinations for Torrey Craig and Jevon Carter, as a recent Bleacher Report has come out and suggested that Torrey Craig might be a great fit for the Denver Nuggets and the Boston Celtics. And so we're going to be talking about some trade scenarios in which Chicago could trade both Torrey Craig and Jevon Carter. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and you have found yourself on another episode of Bulls Digest. And so we are breaking down some trades and some possible scenarios that could ship off Torrey Craig and Jevon Carter. I know that recently in this particular article, they were talking about Torrey Craig and the possibility of him going off to a team like Boston and Denver, where it makes a lot of sense because they're more so in a win-now situation. And in this article, they don't suggest any trades, but what I did was I went ahead and I took the trade generator out and I went ahead and made some suggested trades which would ship off these players and possibly get the Chicago Bulls some assets that either are going to work with them for their long-term core build that they're looking to do, or it is going to be contracts that they can come off of. And so remember, more than likely in these particular scenarios, you're looking at some second round picks that are going to be attached. Remember the scenario that was going on around Andre Drummond last year where we could have gotten some second round picks. I think that that's probably going to be more likely for a player like Torrey Craig or Jevon Carter. And this is counting on the fact that you're going to have some winning teams that feel like they're either right there or they're in that championship window, and they want to make this deal done so they can get players that can immediately help that. And so let's go into the first team that is suggested here, which is the Boston Celtics. That is one that they talked about in Bleacher Report, and I think it does make a lot of sense. They just won the NBA championship, and this is more so a trade that they're trying to maximize that window right now. Just think about, how Kristaps went down with an injury, and I think that Torrey Craig perhaps could have given them a little bit more of a security blanket there with a guy that can come in, defend, and knock down some jump shots. I get he's a little bit older, but still, it would give them a little bit more of a bench that they can rely on if injuries do occur. And so here is the trade that I came up with, and it is Torrey Craig for Jordan Walsh. And I think that this is a deal that, again, if you're selling this one to the Celtics, they're looking to go ahead and get a player like Torrey Craig to come on over, help maximize that championship window. He's going to be able to knock down three-point shots, and he's going to be able to defend. You can shift him back and forth from different forward positions. If you're playing small ball, he can definitely play that. And if you need him to play the traditional three, then that certainly helps stretch the floor there. And so with Jordan Walsh, I think that this is a player that the Celtics would have to be giving up on. He's only in year one. He didn't play a lot. He was one of the youngest players coming out. And in fact, if you look at his draft profile, they say that he has the shades of a Jonathan Kuminga or more like a Tari Eason that plays for the Houston Rockets. And so that's a pretty good comparison. All right. And so they're curious to see if he gets to that. One of the things that they do talk about is that because he is so young, here's a player that it is going to take some time for him to eventually crack the rotation. And so I think the only reason the Celtics maybe trade him off is if they feel like, it is going to take some time for him to crack the rotation here in Boston. He may not get that development that we're looking to necessarily give him, and it makes a lot more sense for him to go over to Chicago. Chicago gets a chance to look at this young man and see if perhaps he is going to fit in their young core as they shift to a youth movement. Next, let's look at Denver. All right, and so Denver, I'm going to say that maybe a player like Hunter Tyson, if we're looking at just a player swap. And I say that because I don't think that the Nuggets want to give up some of their young pieces that they already have over there to go ahead and get Torrey Craig. And remember, I'm doing these deals minus the draft compensation. And I think that Torrey Craig fits a lot there. I think that he's played there before, if I'm not mistaken. And he's going to bring that presence a lot like Jeff Green did, who's playing for Houston. So I think that that makes a lot of sense to get him over there. Again, you get the three-point shooting. You also get a person that can come over there and defend. And then with Tyson Hunter, what we get with that is here's a player that is a definite project player for us if we were to get him. He's 6'8". He averaged 23.8 points in the G League, also 7.6 rebounds and 2 assists. And what's more impressive is that if you look at his college career in Clemson, here's a player that went from scoring 1 point a game all the way up to 15 points a game and 9 rebounds a game. So he plays big, and here's a player that was a second-round pick in 2023. So maybe this is a player that the Chicago Bulls get, I believe, on an expiring deal, and they can take a chance and take a look at this player. Actually, it's on a 3-year deal. So a 3-year deal, but $1.8 million. So the money actually is a little bit better for the Chicago Bulls in the long term, but it's a 3-year deal. But it's a player that they can take a look at and see if perhaps he is going to fit that youth movement for them, because now you have a player that you desperately need on your front line, because that's one of the things that I think the Chicago Bulls don't have, and that's a lot of power forwards and centers, and so they need that. And so I think that that makes a lot of sense. Now, this deal is going to be a team that is not mentioned. This is a team that I think they would have to seriously be in consideration of maximizing their window. They have a piece over there to go along with Torrey Craig that makes sense to go get him. But I'm going to say it's the Los Angeles Lakers, and I'd say that if you were to do just a straight player swap, then you could go with Torrey Craig for Jaxson Hayes. The money matches up here. We get an expiring contract. They get an expiring contract as well. And I think for, LeBron, AD, that makes a lot of sense, because they're looking for somebody that's just going to be a stationary catch and shoot player, and that is something that Torrey Craig can do for you. They're also going to look for somebody that is going to defend, because I'm not sure that, they're going to get that across the board necessarily from LeBron all the time, and AD as well. With the injuries and things like that, you're going to need somebody that is going to defend and come off the bench and possibly have to start for you. So I think more so this is a better offensive fit for the Lakers if they're looking for somebody that can be that 3-and-D player, and that's something that LeBron James likes to have. Now, with the Chicago Bulls, they get a young big man in Jaxson Hayes. In fact, when he was with the Pelicans, there was at one point in time, he averaged 9.5 points a game and about 4 or 5 rebounds a game. And so he is more like a JaVale McGee type of player, like a DeAndre Jordan type of player. And I'm talking about the Lob City, where he's able to catch lobs and things like that. And so, again, just comparison wise. And so if you were to bring him over, and let's say that we do eventually move on from Vooch, one of the comments out there was, well, okay, what is going to happen in the front court now that you've moved on from Vooch? Well, if you don't necessarily believe that Jalen Smith can handle that starting gig, and you don't believe that Sunoco now, as he's going to be elevated, and Kenny Lofton Jr., who is undersized but would have to play on the front line, then you bring a player like Jaxson Hayes over, who, if you start him or you bring him off the bench, either way, he's going to bring some excitement to that unit, because he is going to run the floor. He is going to block shots. He is going to rebound. And remember when we had Tyson Chandler and it didn't work out because we didn't have that personnel? Well, I think we have the personnel that could possibly unlock Jaxson Hayes, especially if you pair him with a Giddey, Kobe White, Ayo coming off the bench. This is assuming that Lonzo is still there, Modest Buzelis. So you can imagine that that would be exciting to see this young Bulls team run up and down the court. And look, Derek Lively, right? Like, Derek Lively is simply a lob threat, a rebounder, and he's going to block some shots. And so you can absolutely make it happen in the NBA. You just have to find that personnel that goes around him. And so maybe the Chicago Bulls would find something here in Jaxson Hayes. And they also, too, could switch Jaxson Hayes out for Christian Wood. Just putting that out there, too. The money matches up if you were to move Torrey Craig for him. All right, so next, The next scenario is focusing on just solely Jevon Carter. And I talked about this just about a couple videos ago, and it is a trade to the Wizards for Corey Kispert. And I said that, I'm not sure that Corey is going to be in the long-term plan for the Wizards. It's an expiring deal, and then the Wizards would take on the 2 years left with Jevon Carter. But they did just bring Malcolm Brogdon over there. He's 31 years old. Jevon Carter is younger than that. And perhaps they need some veteran leadership here. And I think that Jevon Carter, Malcolm Brogdon, they definitely fit that build. Maybe they're helping to shape the players that they have there with the Wizards. And they're also going to get some playing time. And I think the Wizards can also go ahead and flip both of those players out if you have teams that want to come in and say, hey, we think that these players could actually help us maybe get to a championship or take us to another level, and so they could flip them. But I think with our situation, perhaps we get a player that we could have gotten maybe if that Kings deal would have went down with Kevin Huerter. We also get a player that's like a Joe Harris, and so maybe that makes sense for us. It is an expiring deal. I've said before, he is almost like a younger version of a Pat Covington. So I think that maybe opens it up for the Chicago Bulls, and they get a shooter over there that they can use to help stretch the floor that is young enough that may go with this young core. All right, so next up, we're focusing on moving both of those players, and I'm talking about Jevon Carter and Torrey Craig. And so I say the Bucks, and I say that this deal could possibly happen. You get Pat Covington over, you get MarJon as well. And yes, we do get an added year because it's 2-2 to 2-1 over here with the Bucks. But here's the reasoning behind this particular situation. I go back to the press conference with Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers was brought in mid-season for a coach that had led the Bucks to the top of the East or whatever that looked like, and he talked about it being a lot of pressure to win and win right now. And remember that dust up on the sideline with Giannis and Coach Griffin, like that suggests that they have put all the chips on the table to win a championship in Milwaukee, like right now. And I think that when you would bring a player like Jevon Carter over there, he had some success there. I think he's going to get a ton of backup minutes with Milwaukee. And I think Torrey Craig is going to help them a lot defensively. And also, too, these are players that I think that Giannis is going to be able to trust. And not saying that he doesn't trust Covington or he doesn't trust MarJon, but I just think that between those two players, perhaps I think with MarJon, he's actually shown that he's gone down in playing time slightly this last year. And I know he's only in 2 years, but I think that Doc really likes to use veteran point guards. If you go back and look at his time at Boston, he used Sam Cassell. You look at his time with the Clippers, Chauncey Billups. He also went with Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford. Like, he likes to really lean on veteran point guards. And so I think that would make a lot of sense to bring Jevon Carter over. And Torrey Craig, I think, kind of fits their timeline of that win right now. And I just don't know if MarJon is going to be in those cards. He's getting ready to run into some contracts. And so maybe it makes a lot of sense for the Chicago Bulls to maybe take a look at that, see if maybe he is going to work out with their young core. And then, with Pat, I feel like he comes over. Here's a guy that is like he would be like the Duncan Robinson. Like, if we were to make that deal with Zach Lavine going to the Miami Heat, he's going to be that deal that comes over. It's a contract that we could use. He can also shoot the ball as well. And so that's why I would say that deal might be something that the Milwaukee Bucks would take a look at. And then we have the Clippers. All right. And so the Clippers, I think, are again in a win now situation. And I think that they have a lot of pressure on them. All right. And so they've gone into a new stadium. And I'm saying that perhaps we would get an expiring contract with Amir Coffey. And then also, too, maybe they give up on Kobe Brown. And I got a chance to watch a lot of his games at the University of Missouri. This young man can absolutely play basketball. I think you're going to get a chance to see that this year if the Clippers use him. He is an undersized big, but I absolutely think he would be terrific in a playing style where they are going to run up and down the court. And that is something that I think the Chicago Bulls are trying to get to. So maybe that does work. And then also too, if you didn't like Amir Coffey, you could go ahead and you could sub in Bones Highland. All right. And so if you feel like, look, you want to pick up Bones Highland, I know we have a lot of guards, but you would be moving off of Jevon Carter. You're more than likely moving off of Lonzo Ball. And perhaps you're going to pick up Bones Highland that next season after that contract expires. And maybe he is a future backup point guard for you if you see that. Or if you feel like Josh Giddey is not going to work for you, then you do have Bones Highland on your roster. So with this being said, that is the trade proposals that I have out there. Remember, I didn't use any draft compensation in any of these deals. Let me know in the comments, do you like any of these deals that I have proposed? And we're hoping that the Chicago Bulls have learned from the past and they move on from assets that are not going to, be there for the long haul for them. So like Andre Drummond last year, I think the Chicago Bulls had to know that he was not going to be in the long-term plans, and they could have went ahead and got some draft compensation for him. So hopefully the Chicago Bulls will either get a player or some draft assets to help them in their rebuilding. So with that being said, I just want to thank everybody out there for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Now this was a pretty long video, but wanted to go ahead and break that down for you guys. And just wanted to say, look, that there are 65.6% of you that watch the videos that are not subscribed to the channel. So please continue to go ahead and dunk on that subscribe button for me. It means a lot as we try to reach 5,000 subscribers. And even though we are going through 8-10 trades for Torrey Craig, and we're not even close to the NBA season, don't have anything on the table for him, I'm still saying go Bulls. And as usual, man, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.